Good morning, guys. I am back again. I'm so sorry for yesterday's mess up. My technological skills are not that great, and so we missed out yesterday's devotion. But we get going again today. It's Wednesday morning. Good morning. We're talking about David. We spoke last time on Monday about how David was called by God because not because he was greatly gifted or he was better looking than anybody else or had a better education. He was called by God because he had a heart after God. His heart was open, his heart was broken, his heart was exactly what God was looking for. And it's God not looking at the outward appearance. I'm really grateful for that. But God looking at the heart. And we spoke a little bit about that. But David now went into a place where he was just hanging around. He moved out of where he was to Ramah, where Saul was. And Saul was still the king. But one day, a very tragic statement is made of Saul. And it says this in 1 Samuel 16, and the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul. Now, whenever the Spirit of the Lord departs, some other element will find its way back in. A vacuum always creates pressure or sucks something else in. So Satan saw an opportunity, and it says, the Spirit of the Lord departed, and an evil spirit came to torment Saul. Saul did an interesting thing, and I just find it intriguing, the power of good music to restore your soul, because his attendants realized that Saul's soul was traumatized by what was going on. They realized that Saul's soul was all over the place, and Saul needed to hear from God. So they did a very good thing. They called a harpist, and they found David. Now, David was a gifted musician. He wrote most of the Psalms, and he was obviously a very talented young man. And so they took David and they put him in the palace with Saul, and they said, play your harp, create an environment where God is able to speak to Saul. I'm not sure whether God ever spoke to Saul again, but they did the right thing. They created an environment in which God can speak. Now, there are different environments wherein God can speak. He can speak anywhere. But there's some places and at some times where the environment in which we sit or the environment in which we live is just conducive to God being able to speak to us. Some of them are very common sense, and some of them are very, preferential. But I like sitting outside. I just love the outdoors, and for me, being outside is a great place where I can connect with God. But there's one that is common to most people, and that is the power of good worship music. Let me make this deeply practical for you. Let me challenge you, or hopefully inspire you. When you're feeling down, when you're feeling miserable, the pressures of life getting onto you, why don't you do this? Why don't you go and play some really good worship music? Get some great songs of your own preference. Could be hymns. It could be Hillsongs. It could be Lizanne singing. It could be anything. But he's singing or making worship, and in that environment, isn't it amazing how God is able to speak with us? It's about an environment that we create that environment so that God's Spirit can speak with us, because our spirits, our souls, are ready to receive from Him. There's a beautiful thing that backs this thesis up, and you find it in 2 Kings chapter 3, and it's a story of Elisha. And Elisha is visited by a whole bunch of kings who've got themselves into trouble, and they desperately need a word from the Lord. So Jehoshaphat, the king of Israel, he brings all the other kings to Elisha, and he says, Elisha, we need a word from the prophet. We need to know what to do. So Elisha doesn't go into one long spiel of telling him, right, do this, do the next thing, turn left, turn right, do the next. He didn't do that. He just says, call me a harpist. And they bring him a harpist. The harpist begins to play. And Elisha, reveling in the sense of worship and of beautiful music, God spoke with him and told him what he needed to tell the kings. And I wonder, you come to church and some people will look at worship and say, do we have to do this? Why don't we just go straight and have a sermon? But I've got to tell you, people, as a preacher, it's so much, I don't want to say easier, but it's so much more beautiful to be able to preach the Word of God to a congregation whose hearts and minds have been prepared by great worship. Never underestimate that period of time in church where we worship. Never underestimate that power of worship in your car, where you put on decent music, that power of worship in your home, where you fill the atmosphere at home with a sense of the presence of God. God brings His peace. He restores your joy. Very often, we need to change the environment. So I want to encourage you to create that environment, whether it be like these kids who listen with that stuff in their ears and they're listening to something, and I'm sure that whatever they're listening to inspires them, creates a sense of momentum in them, and restores their mind and their thinking. So think about that today. Try it. Play some good worship music in your home, in your car. Come to church and enjoy good worship, and in the context of that, watch God speak to you. Is that an idea? Think about it. Do it. It'd be great for you to try. Have a great day, people. See you tomorrow.